What is up, ladies and gentlemen? We are back. We are live. It is the Freight Coach Podcast, the top podcast in transportation, coming to you guys every single weekday, 8:30 a.m. Pacific, 10:30 Central, to break down some industry headlines. But most importantly, you guys provide some actual insight into what you can do with all of this information. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome. This is the real side of freight, ladies and gentlemen. And I say that before every single show. And what I mean by that is I only speak with transportation professionals because at the end of the day, you guys, I want to talk to the right individuals who have done what you're looking to do or who are currently doing what you're trying to achieve. So you can take that information, apply it, utilize it, and see a meaningful difference in your business and your life. Happy Tuesday, everybody. I'm going to jump right in. I got a very special guest for you guys here today. I've known him for a while now, and I'm just excited to get him on the phone. He is a transportation professional to its T. He's a serial entrepreneur, and we're going to talk high value freight, expedited, all that fun stuff today and building it up. So I have Mr. CJ Johnson on the show today. So CJ, thank you so much for joining me.
What's up, Chris?
Nah, dude, no, I'm a lot, man. I'm ready. I'm ready to rock. Every time we've been, every time we've ran into each other over the years, man, it's always just been great talking to you because you're just a hustler, dude. Like that's that's the first thing that comes to my mind. You're always coming and going every time we've met on the show, man. So I appreciate you taking the time to join me today.
Well, thank you. It's funny you say that because I wore baseball numbered 14 for Pete Rose in college because of Charlie Hustle. So that's what they called me. It was Charlie Hustle. So yes.
Dude, I love it, man. So CJ, how'd you get your start in transportation? What brought you into to the industry?
So I was selling vinyl siding and windows for Sears out of college, and was working about way too much, way too many hours for a 21-year-old kid, basically. And I had a friend that was working in transportation. I took a huge kind of pay cut to get into sales in transportation back in the mid 90s. And it was one of the best things I ever did, basically, because this industry has been a great part of my life. I love transportation.
So, I say serial entrepreneur because like the few times that we've chatted in person, you're in like multiple sides of the industry, right?
Yeah, I own 5 different companies, all in the logistics space. I have the asset side, FlowTrans. I have the brokerage, which is the BWS side. We have the BNC, which is our e-commerce fulfillment warehouse doing kitting and Walmart, Shopify, Amazon. I have a driver leasing truckers, and then we have the TMS Future Trans, which is an LTL platform that you can route your LTL carriers and truckloads and things like that. So a little bit of everything.
How like where did it start and how did you vertically integrate all of that, right? Because I feel like as a business owner, at least I know I kind of fell into this is like you want to do so much right away because like you get that initial freedom of like, oh my gosh, I'm a business owner now, and then these opportunities come your way and you want to do it. Did you kind of start them all at the same time, CJ, or did you hit like certain revenue multipliers, or it was like
No, not at all. Flow's 25 years old. That's the oldest. And then the TMS came probably about 13 years ago. The brokerage was about 7 years ago. The driver leasing was 9. And then BNC, the warehouse, was right at the beginning of COVID because, I felt like Amazon and Walmart were coming for everybody and we needed to get some brick and mortar going. So no, it was more about the timing of, okay, we're doing well. It's all set up. It's running. All right, let's move to the next one. I'm kind of in that journey right now. I'm looking for the 6th one. I have an idea regarding some trade show, which is what, we do a lot of freight for. More doing some trade show consulting that I'm working on now to this year to start the 6th one. So once things are set it and forget it, and I got, people that I trust or people running the day to day and actually involved in the grind, then I can kind of feel confident to say, hey, what's the next adventure?
What advice? So we're gonna go a little on topic but off topic here, man, because I feel like building systems is probably the most important part of your business early on that a lot of people overlook. I know my tendencies are is I don't really write anything down. I just operate, right? Because I know what to do in my head. But, fortunately, I have a business partner who loves writing stuff down and creating processes and systems for us to follow in that event. And, you brought up a good point because I feel like, I would probably be way more stressed out if I didn't have any of these systems to operate in, even though I have them in my head. Do you think like that's where most entrepreneurs and business owners as they're starting out, that's where they should start, is building out those systems from day one?
Yeah, because you can't go and grow anything if you don't have those systems, right? Like, me and you might be able to sling freight left and right, and it's not a big deal. But to train that to somebody else down the
Yeah.
line, whether it be your middle management, your lower workers in that sense, you have to have processes. Me and you could skip from 1 to 10 and not worry about 7, 8, 9. But for the average person or a lot of people in the industry, they need that. All right, this is the process. This is exactly what I do. This is how I'm going to do it, so they can get to 10 basically. And then you can replicate that and replicate that.
When did you when did that really hit you in business, when you really did that, right? Because I feel like that's one thing that if I didn't have a business partner, if it was just me running this right now, I don't know if I would have ever have made the necessary implementations of a lot of this early on.
Yeah, I think my time, at least personally, was it was a not it wasn't right away. It was probably 7, 8 years. Flow was started in 2000. It probably was in the years of the 7, 8, 9, and those rough years where it exploded to a degree, and then it kind
Mhm.
of everybody and their mother during that time had to pull back and kind of say, "Oh wait, what's going on?" and kind of not just go off just go wild and just kind of say, "Hey, let's take freight and do this and take that." And during those times, I think it was the time where we realized, all right, we need to get this down. We need to get our process down. We need to get our procedures down, and we need to be able to do that. So as that progressed and we got really good at it, it was able to easily to replicate that with new businesses as I started, basically as we started with, whether it be my partners or
Mhm.
myself.
Is that how has that translated into, you brought up trade shows, for example. I know you guys do a lot of high value freight. Like you guys are in
Mhm.
the spirits and everything else that's out there. How has that led to success inside of that side of the industry, right? Because I know the trade show work that I've done in here, like, man, there's so many I's that you need to dot and T's that you need to cross just to ensure that you're getting it in there to the marshaling yard and everything else.
Mhm.
Have you seen a direct correlation to it, or is that why you started, kind of going after that style freight?
Yeah, I think so because we have a lot of people on our team that have experience, right? Rob Bussey's got 30, 40 years, if not more, in the that space. But to be able to teach the young workers or other workers as well, you have to have those processes down because it's such,
Yeah,
like you said, a niche type service that we're providing basically. So we have those processes so that if Rob's out for a week and he's never usually out for even a day, but there's other
yeah,
people that can handle and pick up the slack when it comes to the weekends, the nights, in those moments. So if you don't have those, that's an industry that can get sideways very quickly, as you know, right? Because next thing you
yeah,
know, that trade show is going to be putting that product on somebody else's trailer, and that bill that was $500 to your client is now $5,000 because it gets just thrown into a general, the gen pop, I guess, as you say.
yeah.
You definitely need to have those processes down so that as you're teaching those people in the specific industries, um, it's a requirement for sure.
How do you assess risk versus, actually kind of going after, because like, and I guess the way that I'm trying to word this is, CJ, is we all start somewhere, right? Like I do open deck and heavy haul now, but I started without doing it and kind of building up that
Mhm.
experience. So how do you kind of leverage that risk of trying something new like trade show or high value? And what advice would you give to somebody who's presented with that opportunity for the first time and they've never done it before?
Yeah, I think it's being honest with the clients. I think it's about the relationship you have to be able to, if you have that opportunity, saying, "Hey, you know what? I don't know this, but you're asking me about this for a reason, Mr. Mrs. Client. So there's a reason you're calling me. You're having some issues possibly, or you're having some not great experiences, and maybe it's you just saying, "Hey, I need a little time to kind of learn it, to understand it, to find you some carriers that I can actually service you well, and then get it done." Right? Most, in our industry, everyone wants to just take, and it's like
Yeah.
they just say yes to everything, and that's not always the way that I've found success over 30 years. Is just being honest, saying, "Hey, I can't do this," or "You know what? I got to get back to you. I'm going to go and talk to some people and get it done for you the right way." Because there's too much out there, like you said, just taking freight, taking opportunities, taking something, and they have no clue. And next thing you know, that's when disaster happens, and that's where you get bad thoughts of, oh, this broker's so bad, or this,
Yeah.
carrier's so bad. They put a bad name out there. And so I think it's just being honest and going after doing the work, right? Like, you had to go for those open hauls. Like, you had to go and actually make phone calls and find carriers. They didn't just show up on a load board
Yeah.
anywhere, right? You put in the grind, and most people don't want to put in the grind.
Yeah, it's, and I think I'm bringing up a lot of that because I talk about like the niche and starting somewhere, and really gaining that experience before you branch out, right? Because, like, yes, I'm a risk taker. I mean, obviously you're a risk taker. You've been self-employed for 30 years now, CJ, like, and I'm just at 5 years of being
Yeah.
self-employed, but I would rather roll the dice on myself than anybody else, but I also am very calculated with the risks that I take at this point. And I feel like if more people spent more time learning the blocking and the tackling, the fundamentals of what they want to go after, I feel like more opportunities would truly come their way, because I don't feel like the one-stop shop transportation provider is going to be a thing anymore, right? Where it's just like, hey, we can do your air, ocean, intermodal, LTL, FTL, you name it, send us our way, we're your guys. I don't see that that's going to be a thing anymore, especially with the advancements in technology that is out there, the ability for every manufacturer and customer out there to know where prices are, capacity, all of that stuff. And then on top of that, man, they're getting hounded at every given moment by other providers that are inside of there waiting for you to mess up.
Yep. And that side has even gotten crazier with the AI, right? I mean, you got,
Mhm.
bots that are calling you as if they're us. Like, really,
Yeah.
we looked at a system just last week or 2 weeks ago that literally it was phone calls from our voices that were going to our clients, talking to them, and it was very close to, holy cow, this is scary. Like, it's a scary world in that sense. So yes, you want to be on top of it for sure.
How, like, with speaking of that and the advancements in technology and everything, man, where do you see things going with this? Do you think that because excuse me, do you see this where if everybody's going to go to automation, you're going to go in the opposite direction and go back to how you probably started your business, knocking on doors, building up the relationships that way? Or are you going to leverage the like the menial tasks, right? Like the documentation processes and all of that stuff.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a hybrid, like you said. I think relationships are going to matter more in the next 20 years, at least the next 10 years, more than they've ever mattered, right? Because we're all
Mhm.
going to have that back end automation for tracking and tracing, and maybe data entry, and importing documents, exporting documents, sending emails to, hey, Mr. Customer, that this is delivering that, and this is, oh wait, it's in real time, blah 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 blah. But I think there's still going to be a need for that communication of, they're going to do business with people they trust and people they know. So I do think we need to dive in. And it worries me a little bit with the younger generation, in the sense I've seen it for the last probably 5 or 10 years, and I see it with my own kids, and
Yeah.
their generation group of, they love their little phones and their little, and getting on, and everything is an email, a text, or whatever it is. But I think there's going to be that 10 or 15 years, we're still going to have that relationships that are going to be needed, which is still our time, Chris. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think 20 or 30 or 40 years from now, maybe it's different. But I think for now, the next 10 or 15, it's going to be relationships. It's going to be communication. It's going to be picking up the phone, saying, hey, what is the idea? How can I move this? What experience can I bring with the automations we're doing now? We're seeing a lot of that in our space. We're helping a lot of customers now bring automation and bring AI into their space through our platforms.
Yeah. And I think, like, because an entrepreneur group that I'm in right now, they talk about, the Amazon effect, right? Like, there's always going to be somebody with more funding that's out there. Like, there's way more of the people who are trying to fight for the top spot than there are the people at the top spot, right? So it's like, if you look inside of the transportation industry, getting up to that level, right, where the multi-billion dollar revenue companies, they're always going to be there. We're always going to be fighting that. But how do you compete with that, right? Like, how do you deliver that, you know, opportunity as a small business owner or a medium-sized business to really gain that market share? And for me, dude, it is going to be going back to the old school methodology that it is, because I feel like if everybody is going to invest heavily inside of automation, AI dialers, and everything else, it's only a matter of time before manufacturers and shippers have an AI receptionist fielding every single inbound call. And then it's going to be bot talking to bot, and there's going to be no deals that are going to be done. And it's going to be the people who are not afraid to go out and meet face to face, knock on doors, and do what's necessary to actually stand out. Because otherwise, man, it's just going to be bot to bot sales. And I don't really see a lot of progression being made with that.
Yeah. Yeah. I was down in, I don't know, probably about 3 months ago. I was in Dallas, and I actually went in old school from 30 years ago. I actually knocked on a door I saw a whole bunch of trucks and a dock, and I actually knocked on the door and gave a business card. And they couldn't believe, because they're like, we have not seen anybody in like 10 years come knocking on our door. And that's how I got in the industry. You didn't have all this like LinkedIn or these connections, even where you knew phone numbers. You went, knocked on a door, knocked on the front door, had to work the receptionist or the front desk person. Then you had to back door and maybe walking through the back door getting yelled at from the dock when in an area you shouldn't have been. That was that's what we did 30 years ago, and it's changed. But I do agree with you. Yeah, I think there's going to be some of that possibly going forward where we're going to need to get back at that.
Yeah. And I every time I see somebody post about how hard it is in sales and everything else, and I'm just like, man, like, do you think people just like willingly give you $1 million checks, like just because you have a pulse? Like, where is the, like, of course the market is what the market is right now, right? Like, yes, you could make every argument in the world that it's challenging and everything else, and then you could just sit there and put your feet up and then tell your boss that, oh man, it's just too hard out there. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do this. But people are onboarding new providers all the time, and it's like, you cannot be afraid to pick up the phone. I'm one of, like, I prefer a cold call, man. I would rather be told no over the phone and then save 87 hours of follow-up in that moment where I can reallocate my time to a prospect who actually has some interest than going out there and just going after somebody. And then just like, cause like with email and DMs, man, it's just a non-response, like they just won't respond. You just keep following up and keep following up. I would rather be told no right away, so I know at least who not to go after. I don't know, man, maybe it's just my public school education, but I would rather know what not to do, and who not to go after.
Yeah. And I would say talk to everybody. That's the thing I tell our sales team and my people on my staff, including my lower level junior brokers, even talk to everybody. When you're out in your Christmas dinners, you're at your, church groups, you're in wherever your little ball field watching your kids, go and talk about what they do. You don't have to go and try to sell anybody. Just find out about, because you'd be surprised. There's so much. I call it the old Kevin Bacon game, where there's so many people that you already touch in your life that you don't realize that they have freight, or they can introduce you to somebody that has possible freight opportunities. So, that's a key that I think people haven't always learned. And it's kind of surprises me because, you got everybody and their mother coming over the top and trying to, like you said, blast, call, or, forced to do business. But it's like, just go make a friend, make a relationship, get involved in your chamber of commerce locally, get involved in your clubs, whatever it is. Find out what people do. And if they don't, ask who they can maybe refer you to. And it's so funny. Like, I just got a call last week from a fraternity brother that started his own company. He wanted to know about transportation. He knew that he knows that I'm in transportation and logistics. I get calls from 5 years ago, a conference I went to. CJ, I remember you. I kept your card, and here it is. Like, right. So it's like going out there and just being out. And it can be as little as a CSCMP local group. We're very big in Chicago with our CSCMP group, the Traffic Club in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
When I travel, I try to hit those as well from other, the New York Traffic Club I'm a part of. Just get involved, man. That's the key, is get involved, and you will find opportunities as they go.
I think networking, CJ, is the one thing that I didn't do enough of early on in my career. But now that I own my own thing, man, I want everybody with a pulse to know what I do and what my company's about and everything. And I think that is probably, if there is anything that you need to focus on, if you're in sales, business, anything, is networking. And I think, like, you need to double down and triple down on networking, getting out there. And, there's a thing though, where it's like, you can network the wrong way, like, I think you have to go in there with the mind of like, hey, CJ, I'm Chris. How can I help you? Not, hey, CJ, I'm Chris. What can you do for me? And that's a big perspective thing that I think a lot of people need to really understand before they go in there and start talking to anybody, because anybody who's ever accomplished a sliver of anything knows when they're getting bullshitted to, and that will end any possible deal that could ever happen if you go in there with the wrong intentions right away.
Yep. Yeah, that's totally true. And that's exactly, like I said, I market myself as Match.com for business because I really don't care even if I get business. It's more about how can I help you? How can I help? You and Trey have been, an example of what the new industry is as far as what you guys are doing. And it's like, how can I help, anybody in any way? I mean, I've had people come
Yeah.
to me and say, CJ, how can I be more boisterous? I'm an introvert. And I'm like, you're really not. You just need to go put yourself out there and say, hello, I am who I am, and just introduce yourself by your name. And that's it. And
Yeah.
and it's not as hard as people think. It seems like it is, but you just gotta do it, right? And especially being a business owner, that's so key, is that networking. And that's yeah, I can't say it enough.
Yeah, I just think like it, from my perspective, CJ, a lot of it, when I'm glad you like the introvert extrovert thing, right? Like I'm an introvert when I'm at home, but I'm an extrovert when I'm working, right? And I've developed. There's a really good book called The Alter Ego, and I think people should go out there and read that one. But it's being able to like turn that on and off when you're out there. Because if you are an introvert, like I mean myself, man, like when I'm at home, dude, I don't want to talk to anybody. I want to hang out with my wife and my kids. I don't want to answer texts or anything like that. But this week I'm on the road, man. When I'm working, I'm working. And there's a different version of myself that's work Chris and home Chris. And I think that people need to explore that and try and really lean into that, because it's always uncomfortable when you first get started, right? Just like cold calling is uncomfortable when you first get started. But again, and you're like, your action will cure all of your anxieties out there, because what you'll come to realize, and I'm not saying anybody who's listening to this does not matter, but you're not as important as you think you are to the people that are out there that you're talking to. They got their own shit that they're worried about, right? They got their own marriage, boss breathing down their neck. They got all of that stuff. They're not thinking about you 30 seconds after you call them.
Right. Yep. Yeah. No, that's so true. So true.
So, how have you, I want to talk a little bit more about how have you over the years continued to show up and execute when things looked bleak, because I think like there's a massive facade out there, CJ, that like you're just going to be successful no matter what, just because you start a business or you start in sales. How have you continued to develop to show up when things did not look like they're going to work out?
Yeah, I think you got to be open-minded. You can't be so stubborn to say, "Hey, let's try this. Let's do something different." Perfect example on the BWS side. It started as a beer, wine, and spirits basically consolidated. I mean, that's still 70% of our product is liquor in that space. But I don't know if you remember, our original logo 7 years ago
Yeah.
was a beer, a wine, and a spirits glass. Um, and the beginning of COVID happened, and it was like everybody's like, we don't really have any of that stuff right now. Or I mean, people were drinking, but they were drinking different kind of stuff. And we had to pivot, and we went into drayage. We laid into drayage because that's what our clients and our people were asking for. And we got really good at it over the last 4 or 5 years, where we're picking up probably in every major port every single day, doing that work, right? We had to listen. If we wouldn't have listened and we would just stay down the path during that time, I don't want to ever say that we would not have been here, but I'm not sure. Like, there's no reason to think that, oh my God, we were going to definitely continue on that path and be able to survive another, few years without having the freight that, was what we started from. So I think you got to be, like I said, open and honest with yourselves. And a lot of times people are not like that, right? Things change. This business changes. There's new technologies. There's new things that you can hear. And if you're not open to ideas and like at least trying them, then I think that's where you fail. You got to, like I said, it's a self-check. I'm not always perfect and I'm not always right. If anytime, there's times where I'm more often not right, but I like to throw it at the wall, see what sticks kind of person.
Yeah, I mean, and I think like, man, there's so much uncertainty with all of it, right? But I think like you have to be in a constant state of assessment of like, all right, if this isn't working, what do we got to do differently? Or is it just we haven't been doing it long enough yet, right? I feel like most individuals out there stop at the literal first sign of pushback adversity and they quit way too early on it. But again, it's like I think like one of the most simple pieces of advice out there, but another very effective one is dude, if you just don't make the same mistake twice, I think you will be successful by default in the long run, right? But that's like I think it's when you go through that, learn what you did wrong, make the necessary adjustments, and then move forward.
Yeah. And the other thing that I preach a lot about, and sometimes the elders, or let's say the people with experience sometimes push back on me, is we're A pluses. You're an A plus in your mind. I'm an A plus in my mind.
Yeah,
you're not going to get
course.
us off that, right? We are that A plus. And our workers or managers are in their minds A pluses, right? They're the best they are, and they are probably A's and A pluses. But in our minds, they might be only the highest they can ever get to is B plus, right? We have to be okay with a B plus in our minds, not their minds. They are A pluses, if you understand what I'm saying. Where we sometimes just think, oh, well, we can do it better, we can do it quicker, and that's the process of how you can grow. Because if you know, you can't go do other things until you know that things are done in the processes or in the the growth of that company. If you're not getting those people and trusting that they're doing a great job for you, and yeah, maybe you're only making 15% instead of making 18% if you were doing it. Like at the end of the day, you know what? You got to be okay with that, or you're never going to be able to grow. 100%.
No, dude, I'm right there with you, and those are those lessons that you learn after, and this is the thing, man. Like that, how long did it take you to realize that? You think, CJ?
Oh, 10 years plus. Like
Yeah.
I said, if you would have known me 15 years ago, you would have think I was probably a torture to the people from 2000 to 2010. I was probably a nightmare of a boss. But the last 15, now I'm CJ, the the old wise, I guess, dinosaur, I guess, at this point, But yeah, I was a different person 15 years ago, for sure.
And that's the thing, man. But that's just a testament to you actually, again, learning what not to do and then making those necessary changes and keeping pushing forward. And that's just going to be the MO for anybody who wants to make it in any market inside of the transportation industry, right? Like you cannot control that, right? Just like we cannot control what goes on in the Oval Office, global trade, all of that. We can't do any of that, man. But we can control what cards are dealt to us and how we attack that and try and move on from there, man. But CJ, I appreciate your time. I like to keep these shows kind of right at that 30-minute mark because everybody's got a day job, man. Just like I got a day job, I got freight to move and everything else, man. But how does anybody reach out to you to find out more about what you got going on?
Feel free. I'm all over LinkedIn. I'm all, my email is cj@bws-logistics.com. I'm always available. You can find me at any conference typically, although I'm not going to be at TIA. I apologize for that. I think the next one will be TMSA. I think it's Jennifer Carpus Romaine, and she's great in her group. But yeah, feel free. I'm always out here to have conversations, to talk. Don't come in trying to sell me off the bat. That's the worst thing you can do. Just come and be a friend first and see how I can, help you in any way I can. I'm always here, and everybody who knows me knows that about me. And I'm fun. Meet me at the bar.
CJ, I appreciate it, man. And I can attest to that. CJ is a great guy. He's been really good to me over the years. And, you guys need to hit him up and everything, but that's going to be it, you guys. We have a pre-recorded show that we're releasing tomorrow because again, I'm traveling down to Texas tonight and I got some customer site visits because I practice what I preach. You guys, I'm going out and knocking on doors tomorrow in San Antonio because I need to maximize my time when I'm out on the road and everything and drive as much revenue as I can. But we'll be back live on Thursday and Friday, you guys. As always, if you guys got value in what you heard, subscribe to the show. If you're feeling really ambitious after this one, which you should be, rank the show on iTunes and Spotify because if you saw value, that's how your network's going to see value as well. I appreciate you guys. I love you guys. And we'll be talking to you soon.
Take care, bud.